My name is Daria, and this is my colleague Alexei. And about 3 years ago, we started our research about palaces of culture in Russia. And in the first, we were supported by Dutch. It calls Stimuleringsfonds for Creative Industry. It's kind of fund who support creative projects in the Netherlands, and then we were supported in Russia by a few grants as well. So maybe for people who not really know what Palaces of Culture is, it's huge, multifunctional buildings. They were built in every city, in every village, actually, in every neighborhood, and there are still a lot of them in Russia. And as you saw in our movie, it's really long history of this oh my God, of these buildings. And the first kind of palaces of culture, which were called palaces houses, they were built in 19th century, and they were all different. In those time, there was no typical projects. Each house was different, and also it was very interesting typology, because every building was really reacting on the surroundings and on the problems in the surroundings. They were answering on the circumstances. They were pushing them to build there. And then in 20s, it was also very interesting typology. A lot of these buildings are still exist, and they're still significant. They're still very famous and very important for architects, not only because it was avant-garde, it was constructivism, but also because each building, it was built for a labor union. And here as well, all functions, they were selected. They were the product of the decision of community. What kind of functions do they need for the labor union? This is an example. It's a really famous building. And in the 30s, it was for the first time when this typology became really popular. It was the time when they were built in mass for the first. And yeah, you see that style is really changing. We call it Stalin Empire style. It was totally different because in the previous stage, it was a lot of experiment, and it was a lot of freedom, a lot of competitions for young architects. And here, as you see, it's really time for a typical project, because here it's one project. The difference is it was built in different cities. And in the 50s to the 80s, this was really a time when this kind of buildings were built in every neighborhood, in every city, in every village. And now it's not only work for architects. The whole institutes, like project institutes, were working on the development of this kind of projects. And it's a huge number of projects that were developed in 70s. This is modernism style. This is an example. This is a building, Alexei will tell you a little bit late. This is a building that we reconstructed. And in the 80s, it was a time when crisis of the system of palaces of culture actually started, because not only ideology has stopped actually, but also funding for these buildings were stopped, and they were pushed to just rent out the buildings actually for different crazy functions and activities, as markets or rock concerts and stuff like this. But at the same time, it was a really golden age for Russian rock, because it was a cradle. All these buildings, they were really cradles for Russian rock culture. It was probably the only and the best time for this this culture in Russia. And about 20 years ago, actually, the state realized that we are kind of losing this system, and there are from the 2000s, and there are a lot of programs, and there are a lot of try out to how to preserve and save the system. There are a lot of programs for renovation of these buildings, but we are with Alexei really against it. We are like the biggest enemy probably of this kind of renovations in Russia, because we think it's vandalism. And there are also funny experiments about how to create the new system of palaces of culture, and this calls DNA, like houses of new culture in Russia, DNK. And also there is this kind of things. Then it's kind of car. They are going around to the villages and make small performances. But still very sad. But we can see that a lot of palaces of culture, they turn to shopping malls or business centers and stuff like this. And this is an example actually from Ural region, and it's a funny city called Asbest. The thing that's totally forbidden here, but there still exists, and this is how it looks actually, and it's really impressive how it preserved, because it's still alive, it's still full of life, full of activities, it's still very important for the city. And you can see really unique elements. It's everything from 50s, everything, all elements, and it's amazing how unique is it, and how they were trying to make an accent on the local identity, because this is a stories from typical Ural folk stories. And this is an example of modernism palace of culture, and there are still a lot of them, and there are also very unique elements there. But however, there are 42,000 palaces of culture in the Russia. It's a huge amount. It's still in every city. And the purpose of our project is actually to show the government, the state, how important the system is, and how it can help to bring the whole country to the new creative economy. And we started our project with analyzing all stages of the, as you saw in the movie, all stages of the development of the system. And we were trying to see some special things in each stage. And what we found out is that a lot of things that we are trying to use today, to implement today, and we are saying it's something new, like private state private partnership, or making it multifunctional, or all these things already happened in the past. And it's only by analyzing and choosing them we can use it again in the future. And we also were trying, like Polina asked, why we were talking about typical palaces of culture, but there are a lot of them, and we know that the government always try to save money, and we knew that by making one project you can somehow implement it or change it for another buildings, because they are still same buildings. And what we also realized, that it's impossible to change the system but by only making good projects. We also realized that the whole system is not ready for changings. Actually, you can make perfect buildings, but still the employee, all people who work there, they don't know how to survive now in nowadays. And so our project is actually about an architecture and educational program, and programs inside one regions, like what we do now in Karacháyevo, Cherkessia. And this is how we do it on one level, on like a single project for one building. And this is a renovation project in Voronezh, the city actually we came from with Alexei. We also graduated there in architectural university. And we went there and we received great support of the chief architect of Voronezh region, and we organized a workshop for students, for architects, in collaboration with Voronezh Architect University, and we were trying to see how these buildings, because first, we saw that in our city there are few buildings, few palaces of culture. They are kind of abandoned, so they just staying empty. And we were thinking how we can prove to the government, to the state of the city, that they still can use them for the same function, but to transform them into the modern multicultural, like to the modern cultural center. And we made these huge models. We really studied the all constructions inside, outside, and we made all the new functions, all the new interiors, and we show that they still can be really functioning in those days. There are three types of buildings. This project is from 50s, and those ones are from 70s. They are modernist style, and after this workshop, it was quite a good media story, and the government cannot say no, and they gave these palaces of culture some money, 60 million rubles, for I think, for the first stage of renovation. And further, Alexei will tell about the project.
Daria, could you stop sharing? Then I also share my screen. Yeah, thank you. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
One second. The let's say House of Culture called DK Машиностроители is like machine builders, and it was belonged to 4 factories in Soviet time, but during crisis in 90s it was sold literally for 10 rubles to government, because it could, or it's to the government, or it could be sold and it can become an office or market. Let's say thanks for the people who preserve it from the vandalism. And this building haven't seen for many years any renovation. Let's say it was the status that we entered the, let's say, process of the renovation. Let's say the whole interiors, exteriors, let's say for 30 years, no renovation, just maybe some paint, but still the building still have preserved some quality. For example, this bas-relief on the facade entrance, or in interior, they have really cool gypsum, let's say, decorative elements. We try to preserve them. But main problem of such a buildings that they are not interesting for modern generation. Let's say for them it's more interesting to go to cinema or to shopping malls than spend time in such a building, because they see it as an old school. Let's say we made a quick, let's say in a few months, project. And what is also important for our project, we try to make it complete, not only renovate facade, but we also try to integrate the surrounding, bring also cultural or social programs there, activate it as much as possible. And also, let's say, most of the time, such a buildings, they are really close. Let's say the windows are not transparent. You can't see what is going on inside. Let's say the building doesn't speak with the city. And we didn't make much changes. We really let's say, mostly was solving problem of the, let's say, people who use it. Let's say we open the windows, let's say, try to preserve, let's say, the original decorative elements, and let's say by small intervention we bring, let's say, new life there. Most of the buildings, they have library, they have small auditorium, they have small, let's say, classes for the, let's say, like a paintings or for singing or dancing. And also, normally they have small buffets, but they're not functioning well. Let's say when you come there, you can't buy a coffee. Let's say we kind of introduce really simple new program, like for example, cafe and co-working, which was super for them, super crazy and strange, because they most of the time when you enter the building, it's empty. Let's say it's only function, let's say, from 6 until 9 in the evening, and most of the time it just stay empty. And also we made a, let's say, vision of the, let's say, main auditorium, preserve this beautiful gypsum bas-relief. And let's say renovation took about 3 months, was really quick. And for us, it was also really crazy experience, because basically we were following the whole renovation by WhatsApp. Let's say we were arguing with contractors, with directors. And for them, it was also, let's say, sort of education process, because when they started, for them, it was easy project. Let's say they just could replace the tiling, maybe put the ceramic ventilation facade. You know, it's kind of, it's what Daria showed you before. But we were making really simple tricks and try to, let's say, keep it like that. But at the end, all directors and all, let's say, the contractors, they were on our side. But it took, let's say, several months to explain them how you should renovate such a building, because they're beautiful, they already have quality, but you just have to open it and show it, let's say, without any, let's say, extra changes. And we open up facade, we put most interesting activities also on the facade. And at night, as you saw in the render, at night it's really open up to the city. And unfortunately, they only renovate the ground floor exterior and the main auditorium, but second and third floor not yet renovated, and surrounding as well. This will be, let's say, the third phases. And we also bring new kind of and fresh vision for the interiors. We introduce sort of fixed furniture and try to make it in, let's say, the same style that it was made in 70s. Here you see this beautiful, because they wanted to demolish this barrier, because they didn't see any quality in that. They saw, oh, it's old school, let's demolish it, let's put some material over it. This is the main auditorium after renovation. There were nothing, let's say, special. They only replace acoustic panels in the ceiling and replace, let's say, the seatings. But to make this for us, it was really tough, because they wanted to make crazy stuff, you know, like put purple, or let's make it black. Let's say it took some time for us for this explanation. And also for projects, we, as you said, we try to make it complete. We also make branding. We try to, let's say, organize also programming of the building, that it working, let's say, 24/7, and together with the local artist from Voronezh, he made several art pieces. One of these, let's say, art piece on the wall, the sort of paintings that collect the historical paintings, the local ornaments, which was used also in the building before. This huge sitting bench can use for the people during breaks or for kids play there. Also, navigation was made in the one style. And this is one example. For example, we didn't manage, let's say, in 2000, this barrelief was demolished because there was some problem with structure, and they just tear it down. and we made this kind of panel, but because we didn't manage to bring it back, let's say, it was too expensive. And then artist from also from the same town, he made sort of Instagram mask, and you can scan QR code, which is next to this facade. And in 3D, you can walk around and see this old barrelief, which was for us super new, and maybe still for Russia, it's only a few examples that not only by architecture, but also by digital art, you can preserve and show the history and give it a kind of fresh look. And after this project, there was another important project in Yakutsk. It's the most, let's say, coldest area in Russia. Let's say in winter, it could be like minus 50, but people there are super warm, super nice, and super open. And as we did before, first we organize as well workshop. We collect all local authorities, architects, people who work with the software, because one of the goals for this project was also create sort of website where we can collect and make sort of place where all these buildings can learn from each other and can, let's say, share their knowledge, because it's one of the problems in with such a building, because they live just by their own life and they don't know what's going on in the other world. And this, how building looks like. It was renovated in 2000. It was covered by this ugly ventilation facade, and let's say without any ideas, just kind of simple maintenance, just to preserve it from the, let's say, rain, and that's it. And interiors also were renovated in 2000s, but unfortunately, building kind of lost its identity, and it's just random design without any ideas what is it. But as also in first building, there was some beautiful let's say art pieces which were made in 70s, this mosaic or this let's say bas-reliefs as well. We preserved them and integrated into new design. That's why our project called identity in typical, because in typical buildings, the, let's say, local people who build them, they try always invite artists and put the local identity. And let's say what we learned from the first project, we try to systemize it, and it's what also now in our book, let's say, the several topics, like, for example, that most of the time the people who use it, they don't make any comforts, or nobody think how they behave, for example, between breaks of let's say several classes. The moms, they just sitting behind their cell phone. There is no interaction in between people. By introducing simple comfort cafes, you can organize it. There is nothing special. Let's say we didn't invent anything, simple tricks. Also, one of the problem of such a buildings that they only function on 30%, because, as I said before, they work from 6 in the evening until 9, and most of the time they're empty. And our main goal for such a building, to program them as much as possible, that different generation, different people with different income can use it. As well, the process, the how it's organized, it's mostly you go there for the concerts, you see what's going on the scene, and then you go home. But main idea that was originally there, that people they can improve their skills, they can show they're talented, they can test things, there could be education. But now it become kind of old school entertainment machine, and we try to change it as well. What I said before, the main users of such a building, it's or kids or let's say old people, and we try to balance it for any generation. And this how project looks after. It was a bit different renovation, because original building didn't have kind of quality before, even it was built in 70s. It was poor, it was just simple shtuk, and we tried to bring local identity by new design. And let's say here you see we also introduce new space, because such buildings, they always lack space, and normally this part is open and it's used as a courtyard, but because it's an enclosed area, this courtyard doesn't make sense. That's why we introduced their let's say new space. And here also one of the problems of such a buildings, that all administrative function, they take about maybe 30-40% of the building, and they're just distribute over the whole building. What we try to do, we try to make it compact. The people who, let's say, serve this building, who work on these creative activities, they see each other, they learn from each other, there can be fast interaction as well. And we combine all these offices and functions that support the building in one place, and that they can also, let's say, share. We, let's say, open up this foyer place, introduce a lot of woods, which make it also more warm and healthy feeling. And we try to, let's say, not go in kind of cliche way that you use ornaments and try to introduce these ornaments. Here we, in a kind of soft way, try to balance the modernistic approach and the, let's say, local materials that could be combined. Here you can see as well this beautiful mosaic on the wall, which we preserve. We, let's say, preserve this beautiful columns, which was covered by ugly, let's say, tiling. This is new additional place on the back. This large multifunctional space can be used as a kind of living room for the whole neighborhood. Here also could be, let's say, concert happens. Let's say it's kind of really breathing place for the whole people in the city. And as well, we try to bring back the original style from, let's say, 70s, but give it a fresh touch. For example, if you look at this interior, you could say, oh, it could be also quite modern. Let's say you can learn from different time and styles of architecture and make it fresh and new again. The same as a previous building, we organize library. There are also a large room which can be used as a cinema or can work as a conference. Let's say also one of our main, let's say, design tools, it's to make space as multifunctional as possible, because, for example, in the morning here could be kids activities, during day there could be some presentation happened, and in the evening there could be dance classes. Let's say the space itself, it could work for any functions. That's why we try to make it kind of abstract and adaptable for any users. The same as the previous building, we made a branding for the whole building. And yeah, as Daria said before, we publish a book. It's already solved the whole building, but now we're printing the second one. And let's say it's quite popular now in Russia, and it's also bilingual. Also, parallel to the project, what we try to do, we organize workshops, we make exhibition. Here you can see exhibition that was organized in the city center of Moscow. Here we collect all this different typology and show it to people, the power of such a system, because it's invisible now. Nobody think about it, and nobody see potential there. Let's say our main activity parallel to the, let's say, we are researchers, and at the same time we are architects, which tested and tried. Let's say we try to work parallel, not only do academic work, but also test our ideas and show it to the people. And one of the last exhibition, it was we used the same model, but we put them in a sort of box with the mirrors, and which basically show whole 24,000 buildings. Let's say you can experience the power of the system. And yeah, that's it. I think. Thank you very much.